Welcome into another legendary mock draft. I am your favorite podcaster's favorite podcaster, aka Chev Sanders, aka Chev 90. And I'm here today with a white hot guest, a supernova, if you will, co-founder and co-owner of First Read Fantasy, the host of the Risers and Fallers, the most knowledgeable DST guru on Al Gore's internet, and the most brilliant mind when it comes to pickleball DFS. I'm here with Pete Nova, and I bring him to the stage now. Pete, how we doing today, buddy?
I'm good, man. I am doing well. Ready to get this thing rolling, man. I haven't done a startup in a while, so it's good to kind of get the blood flowing and ready to knock this one out.
Yeah, we're so what we're gonna do today is we're gonna do an actual startup, 1 minute clock, super flex, tight end premium, and we are going to get that rolling. I'm gonna share the screen so we've actually got these guys waiting to get this kicked off.
Jaden Daniels goes at the 101, which we talked offline about. Is it Allen? Is it Daniels? Right? I guess in your mind, who do you prefer at the 101 right now?
It's tough. It's tough to not go with Josh Allen. I mean, honestly, I don't want the one-on-one for the simple fact that I just want to let other people make the choices, and then I'll slide in at like 103, 104 and take whatever's left over.
Yeah, yeah.
If
I'm
I
kind
have
of
to go, if I have to choose one, if I have to absolutely choose one, I've got to go. I have so much Lamar Jackson at this point. I go Jalen Hurt. I mean, excuse me, I go Josh Allen more than I do anything else. So it's kind of hard for me to, it's difficult for me to go against that.
Yeah, I mean, Daniels is the shiny toy, right? Allen is the guy that's done it consistently year over year. In addition to Lamar, right, who's had like one down year in the last three. But I'll take Jamar Chase here at the 105. I know it's a super flex, but to me, the only guy I would else consider would be Burrow, because then it's kind of a drop off, in my opinion, for difference making, where it's like how much extra are you getting than like the above average quarterback. And to me, it's more worth it to get a guy like Chase, who is probably going to give you, 4 to 5 points per game above, the average player at the position, at least in
Yeah.
the top 20. So I'll take Chase there at the 105.
Yeah, creating a positional advantage. I mean, that's, there is no there is no better example of that than Jamar Chase. I mean, the youngest triple crown winner ever. Then, I mean, we're talking about him having I said this on another podcast. I can't remember which one, but I he has, if you look in your league history of like top performances of all time, like two out of the top three are Jamar Chase, and it's not like 1 and 3, it's 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So he gives you, for lack of a better term, corny turn of phrase here, a supernova type boost to your lineup.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, the supernova thing's funny because when I made that on Twitter, I never really thought like of it ever being something that would catch on, but I actually kind of like it over the years. So it's cool. I was making my own channel, right, and I was like, man,
Yeah.
is there a way I can like filter that in somehow? And like, but I couldn't think of anything that sounded good, so I stuck to the basics, man. But you're
Hey,
coming. Go ahead.
no, sometimes simple is the best. Like the most obvious answer is the correct answer.
Yeah. Yeah, simple. That is true. Now let me ask you, Jefferson or Chase, right? That's another thing when we talk about the first tier guys, but I mean, who do you lean there?
I've got to go. So if you ask me this going into 2024, I would say Justin Jefferson, because he's quarterback proof. He had like a 64% catch rate with Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs throwing him the ball. And
Yep.
then, but you have to factor in who's throwing the ball. And even if JJ McCarthy's really good, he's probably not going to be as good as Joe Burrow. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking like Hall of Fame trajectory for Joe Burrow in it. Like if we're talking about his healthy season, so I lean towards Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm with Chase too. I think Chase has the advantage of also
Come
playing with a
on.
pretty bad defense.
Yes.
So, Jefferson, Brian Flores, like they continue to retool that defense. So, they're going to likely be playing with a lead in a majority of their games. Where the Bengals, there's a chance that they're in a lot of shootouts.
Yeah, I mean, they've pretty much committed to the bit. They have to score about 30 points a week to give themselves a better than 50% chance of winning any single game. And it's wild because that division for so long was just absolute black and blue, just gonna beat you up, run the football, pound the rock, establish it. And now you have, two of probably the five best quarterbacks in the entire league, and so it's like, well, you can't beat bad defense. Oh, I'm on the clock here and I have to make a decision. So I'm going to go with my RB1 in Dynasty, Bijan.
Yeah, we did a risers and fallers episode last week, and it seems like me and you are pretty aligned. I had I had Chase over Jefferson for wide receivers, which that show is going to drop tomorrow or Friday this week, and then for the running backs, we just did that one last week on Player Profiler, and I had Bijan one, and Chuck had Gibbs one, and we pretty much had them flipped.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to look at what Bijan, excuse me, at what Jameer Gibbs did at the end of the season. It's like 30 points a game for those last 5 weeks, 15 to 18, right? And the national television division on the line, he gives you four he gives you a four touchdown, like 160 yard, yard from scrimmage performance where he just absolutely lights it on fire. So it's hard to put that out of people's minds, but the thing that stuck with me for Bijan is that so people will point out to me when I say I have Bijan number one that Jameer Gibbs was outscoring him on a total points basis, but it was by like 3 points. He had 12 touchdowns at the time, and Bijan had like 5. So it's just straight yards from scrimmage, PPR, workhorse work. And I feel like I can count on that more than I can, an outlier touchdown season or having to assume that David Montgomery is going to be out of the lineup. Oh,
Yeah,
this
and
is
and and you're on the clock now. I'm gonna kind of give you my rebuttal. Honestly, I think David Montgomery is such a good running back. I don't feel like he gets the love truthfully, like he is one of my favorite running backs to watch play. He just reminds me of like an old school guy where like look, he's not necessarily like a big time bruiser. I mean, he's got power, but overall, like I just love watching him play. And I think when you look at Jameer Gibbs last year, when David Montgomery went down, his points per game went up significantly, right? But in those games that Montgomery was there, I think he averaged like 3 to 4 points per game less. And I think as long as Montgomery's there, that's going to be a thorn in the side. Where when you look at Bijan, I mean, Bijan has Tyler Algier, who's good, but I don't think Algier is anywhere close to the compliment that Montgomery is to Gibbs.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the the thing for me is that this offense supports two running back ones. So you can't really go wrong in redraft. Like if you can't get a hold of Jameer Gibbs because you don't have a top 3 pick, you can take David Montgomery 3 or 4 rounds later and
Mhm.
still feel like you made a profit because he's going to give you, I think he had 7 top 10 finishes before he went down in week 15. And so you can't ever be upset about that. I mean, they're both really good running backs. It puts me kind of in the mind of like way back in the day. I don't know how old you are, but I'll be 40 next month. And I remember Thomas Jones and Jamal Charles and how they both
Mm.
functioned in that Kansas City offense. Jamal Charles would get about 1,500 yards from scrimmage and only have like 5 touchdowns. And then Thomas Jones would have like 900 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns or 12 touchdowns. So to me, that's kind of what it feels like. And I can't be upset in that scenario if I can just wait a couple rounds and get a piece of one of the best offenses in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, David, it's funny because last year with doing like the preseason rankings, I had Montgomery like borderline. I think I had him at like 13 to 12 early on, and then I pushed him back to like 14 after getting some pushback from my co-host, and maybe I was like, maybe I'm a little too high on him. But when you looked at Montgomery, like he was when on the field, like he was I mean, consistently like a mid to high end RB2, and he's a consistent guy. Like David, why am I blanking on the coach Campbell?
Dan
Uh,
Campbell.
yeah, it was Dave Campbell. I don't know why I was like, I was like, is that really his first name, Dave? Um, but I mean, just the way that he likes, like his mentality, Montgomery is a perfect fit. And I never thought, like, people were so frustrated when Gibbs got drafted. And like, if you remember his rookie year, like people were so mad,
Oh
like the
yeah.
first half of the season, because they're like, why are they using David Montgomery? You have such a better running back in Jahmyr Gibbs. And like Gibbs is very good. I'm not here to dispute that. I have him as my RB2 in Dynasty,
Right.
so I get it. But like David Montgomery for real life football, like is a perfect complement in that offense. And it made total sense that like Gibbs was not going to be the workhorse. Now, I think it is a positive that when Monty went down, we did see Gibbs, was able to tote the rock and handle the volume and produce really well. But overall, I never thought Montgomery was gonna be phased out.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense. And that's where having actual knowledge of how these breakouts occur in terms of like touch distribution from a real football perspective help
Yep.
in tempering your expectations of sorts, because you knew the one thing that we knew is that David Montgomery was a really, really good NFL player.
Yep.
And the struggle was kind of figuring out where he fit in terms of their plans and how they have a big back and they have a satellite back. Now they upgraded unequivocally at both positions. So they went from DeAndre Swift to Jahmyr Gibbs. That's a slam dunk. And they went from Jamal Williams to David Montgomery, another slam dunk. So they
Yep.
just got better at both positions. So why would they change the way that they distribute the touches?
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I actually I don't know why just a random thought came into my head, but like I was such a big Matt Stafford guy, right? I know you saw my tweet yesterday.
Yeah.
I it is crazy to think that like I think Stafford like didn't have like a 1,000 yard running back like for for the last 3 years he was in Detroit, and then as soon as he leaves, they have an amazing running game. Like that would have complemented him so well. Uh,
Oh,
oh
yes.
man, I would have loved that.
100%. Like that's the struggle is where does like how I think we both are aligned in like this is a special talent at quarterback. And
Hmm.
he made it work and played through some stuff and endured the dog days of Detroit. And then as soon as he's ready to get out of there, he gets a chance, he goes and wins a Super Bowl. So like great for him in terms of his career arc, but what does it look like if you go from Jared Goff and you put Matthew Stafford in a system with just a plethora of weapons? Like you saw it look good with Reggie Bush at times and Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate, but
Yeah.
just the whole like the ecosystem itself being just elite. Nobody would have said that their offensive skill positions were a top 5 unit at any point in his tenure
No.
in Detroit. So it's wild. That's wild to me, but it's really cool.
It just goes to show the dysfunction, and they've done such a good job. I can't remember the GM's name over there.
Brad Holmes.
Brad Holmes, yeah, he's done a really good job, and honestly, I give Detroit a lot of credit because we're in an environment now where we want results instantly, and so these coaches don't last. Like especially like when you want to change a culture, if it's not happening quick enough, you're not going to find many organizations that are going to buy in and live through the tough times, and they did so with Holmes and Campbell, and they trusted their vision, and it's panned out for them.
Yeah, that should be a message to all teams that are looking now up at Detroit on the pedestal of being an elite organization, not just an elite team, but an elite organization is, hey, don't quit on it. Because I mean that first year they won 4 games, and then the next year they start 1-7, and then they go and beat I'll never forget. They go and beat the piss out of the New York Giants the year the Giants made the playoffs. And
Mhm.
from that point forward, they finished the year like 9-8. And
Yeah.
it's just been no looking back since then. So yeah. But So a couple interesting things here I want to talk to you about that have happened in the draft and kind of take your temperature on what you think about a couple players, a couple selections here. Travis Hunter goes here at the 3-5. What's your take? Where are you at on Travis Hunter? I've heard anywhere from he's the new Jamar Chase and BTJ is T Higgins to uh, his ceiling is Justin Jefferson-esque. Where do you land on this?
You know, I feel like there's no way to do a show like a mock draft without talking about him or Tet. So you got to expect that this is going to come up. So I'm definitely prepared to talk about it. Travis Hunter goes here at the 3-5. He goes ahead of Nico. He goes ahead of Ladd. He goes ahead of Garrett, JSN, T Higgins, AJ Brown, and Tet. I wouldn't. I have Hunter ranked at my wide receiver 14, and I even still feel like that might be too high for me. I get a little annoyed about the comparisons to the last time we saw a wide receiver drafted this high. It was Calvin Johnson. I think that's kind of being disingenuous because
Yes,
look, he was drafted because he was a special talent. Like he could play
correct.
corner and he could play wide receiver. If he came in strictly as a wide receiver, like I don't think he goes that high. I don't think a team trades up to go get him, but he's a special talent that can help a team play on both sides of the football that the team seems to be comfortable with. My concern with Hunter is, look, people want to point to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and say they can do it and be successful. So why can't Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr.? My problem is Brian Thomas Jr. has shown us in just 1 year. We knew he was gifted. We knew he was talented. He was a little bit raw coming out, which was my concern, but he was able to refine his game in training camp and OTAs and just made an impact, right? But this is not Joe Burrow throwing the football. I think Trevor
Exactly.
Lawrence, I think he might take a step forward, but like the dysfunction there is tough, and there's continuity in Cincinnati in an offense and a system that's been there for a while. I have my concerns, and again, that defense is so bad. Jacksonville's defense ain't that good either, but that Bengals defense is so bad. They haven't done a lot to address it. And I just like they're going to continue to play from behind. I just don't like the disingenuous comparison to him and Calvin, who was like the last guy to be drafted that high. I don't know if that answers it. I probably just
Yeah.
went on more of a rant than anything, but to see him drafted here inside, like as like the wide receiver 8, I think is just too high for me.
I fully agree. And I've said to Owls Blue. So I started on the side of, hey, I want to do a thought exercise with you guys. So what if Travis Hunter is going to, this is around, right around combine time or pre-combine. I said, what if Travis Hunter is able to, he says he wants to play some wide receiver in the NFL. And that was just the most, it was like I was talking like I might have, invented fire in front of cavemen because people were in the comments very upset about these things. And so I was like, hey, what if he plays some wide receiver? I think that he's going to contribute. He could contribute immediately to a situation as a wide receiver. And then you immediately identify like New England as a place where he could go and he could play corner and they could have packages for him. Just kind of the way that he was used at Colorado. He didn't go to offensive meetings at Colorado. They had packages for him. And so, and he doesn't have to be a lockdown corner that requires 24/7 focus and, like, hey, I'm studying this opponent's wide receiver 1 and I have to know whenever he has a bowel movement. So you can't, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the level of detail that you have to ingratiate yourself into the game plan with.
Yeah.
So what if he goes there and what if he's able to play some receiver? And that was just heresy. That was lunacy. And now we've, fast forward 60 days or so, and now it's, well, he's a special talent at wide receiver. It's like, well, let's talk about some special talents. Like, let's look at what Jamar Chase did and look at what, no disrespect to Travis Hunter. Look at what Travis Hunter did. Look at what Calvin Johnson was. Look at what Travis Hunter's doing. And so you're taking all of the value, in my opinion, out in a startup and taking him above these guys that we know are studs at wide receiver
Yeah.
by taking him this early. And could he hit that way? Yes, but that's a 99th percentile outcome for a draft pick, and those don't happen very often.
Yeah. You're taking him at the ceiling and leaving yourself like absolutely no room for error. And I mean, in a situation like this, now this person gets St. Brown, Tet, and McMillan. I mean, Tet and Travis Hunter in this guy's build. But I mean, if you're trying to compete and win now, like I don't know if Travis Hunter's a top 20 wide receiver year one. And that's okay. He doesn't have to be. But I worry that we're running into a Marvin Harrison Jr. situation where
Yeah.
he's a good player, has a good rookie season, but we're crapping on the dude because we overdrafted the hell out of him and now we're not happy with the return. And I think that's kind of where we're heading. Now, luckily, Travis Hunter in redraft is going in like that fourth round, sometimes even the third. Marv was like a 1-2 turn, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was really baked in, but I feel like the hype is even higher for Travis Hunter. So I just don't, I think that there's a, maybe the community in redraft is gun shy because of what happened to Marv. But if this was last year, Travis Hunter would be probably going at that 1-2 turn because we didn't get burned like we did with Marv, who was going there last year. And Hunter got drafted higher, and people seem more excited about Hunter. Like, unless I'm crazy, like I don't know, people seem to think he was a better prospect than Marv coming out at the wide receiver position. But I just think he's just it's just about the overall, and that's where people are
Yes.
missing the conversation.
Yeah, I think there's just a different conversation that needs to be had when we're talking about a guy that, like, hey, we can't, I can't, he's too big to fail. Anytime you price yourself in from that perspective, it's never it almost never leads you to a positive outcome. Like, I've been bullish on some guys. I had to take the screen down because now we're getting to a point where we can, it was covering up the picks here. But yeah, it's like a too big to fail situation, and you're setting yourself up for failure with that because you don't, like you said, you don't leave yourself any room for error. But let's talk about the board a little bit here. This fifth round's been a pretty big run on running backs. So I'm curious to know, just to run it down for if you maybe listen to this at work and you got your earbuds in, you can't, you're not watching. So this sixth round here kicks off with Justin Fields, Kenneth Walker, Kenny Three Sticks, James Cook, Chase Brown, workhorse Chase Brown, and Bryce Young, Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, Derrick Henry, and now we're on the clock here. Siak. I don't know if that's how you pronounce your name, but I appreciate you joining, brother. Is there anything that stands out to you here?
So it's Derrick Henry, and the reason it's Derrick Henry is because I don't know that he fits the build for the team that he's on. So for those listening, it's Bowers, it's St. Brown. You have Tet McMillan, Travis Hunter, Dak Prescott, and Henry. I like Henry. Henry is going to be all over the place in dynasty rankings, but I don't think you can be drafting him if you're not a team that's competing. And this person's putting a lot of stock in Travis Hunter and Tet being guys that can help him compete, which is my concern, at least for that build. But overall, I happen to have Harvey ahead of Caleb Johnson. I don't know where you land on that. I have him right behind James Cook, and I have Chase Brown behind Harvey as well. I'm bullish on Harvey. I'm a Broncos fan, but I also I don't care. I get a little annoyed about the whole age thing. I think
Right.
that's overblown. I play Dynasty in 2 to 3 year windows,
Correct.
mainly 3. I'm not worried about RJ Harvey's second contract because the God's honest truth is at the running back position, 75% of these guys don't get the second contract with their team. It doesn't matter if their age. And so that's the frustrating thing with the conversation with Harvey. He's on a 4-year deal with Denver and he gives me 2 top 15 to even 1 RB1 finish, I'm happy with that. I worry about like a guy like Caleb Johnson, who I think while he has more runway, he's younger, and I liked him as a prospect. I look at Najee Harris, who Najee Harris had the most touches in the NFL since 21 in the last 3 years, and he's really just been like a bottom RB2. And Najee was a first round pick. I just don't
Mhm.
trust Pittsburgh, right? I don't trust that offense. And I just worry that Caleb's going to become touchdown dependent unless he grows as a pass catcher, which we don't really know how good he is because Iowa doesn't throw the football to running backs. Um, so that's kind of where I stand on that. But I mean, am I too bullish on Harvey, and am I being a little too hard on Johnson, or where do you
Well,
side on that?
no. So I think that that's an excellent point, and I would agree with you. I'm very bullish on RJ Harvey. Like that's been a thing throughout the process. I've been beating the drum. Did an episode with Debro, and we both were like, listen, this is he's really good. Now,
Yeah.
does he have some opportunities in terms of of like efficiency when it comes to like vision and knowing when to cut north and south? Yes, he stretches plays east and west too much, but it's because he's super freaking fast. And
Yeah.
I mean, he changed direct. And to go along with your point, Sean Payton handpicked this guy, and that means something to me. That means a lot to me. If you understand what that means, it means that he like Sean Payton hadn't done this with anyone since Alvin Kamara, and we see how that worked out. Now, am I saying that RJ Harvey's Alvin Kamara? No, but I would like to have a chance at that. The pass catching role, I mean, that running back room that featured Jaleel McLaughlin, Javonte Williams, and Audric Estime combined for 81 receptions last year. Now we're giving a guy with 4.4 speed that had the second most explosive runs in the entire NCAA behind Ashton Genty. We're thrusting him into that role. So there's no way for me to put Caleb Johnson, who we've seen Arthur Smith shenanigans time and time and time again. There's no way for me to put Caleb Johnson ahead of that. He's going to do some mind-boggling stuff where Jalen Warren comes out and gets
Yep.
19 touches week one, and Caleb Johnson gets 7, and then there's just no way. It's almost like the Bill Belichick Shanahan like shenanigans of yesteryear. So yeah, I'm firmly in the camp of RJ Harvey there. I just I like I said, it's almost a situation where it's too big to fail. What he could be in your lineup, I don't feel like he's being priced at if we're getting him in the sixth or seventh round. And so I'm all in.
Yeah, when you look at Sean Payton's track record, right? I mean, he's taken 3 other running backs in the top 100. It's Reggie Bush, it's Darren Sproles, and it's Alvin Kamara. It's a pretty damn good track record. And when you look at what Sean Payton's done for the running back position from a receiving standpoint, I mean, running backs have made a living just catching the football. They've been in the top 5 for the majority of his career, throwing the football to the running back position. And on top of it, I'm with you. I loved RJ Harvey. If you go back, even with the player profiler, when I was doing the rankings and stuff, like I had Harvey up there. I didn't expect him to get that draft capital. Complete, hands up. Like I loved him, but I just didn't know if the NFL loved him as much as I did. That's somewhere where like I feel like you have to adjust sometimes when we do this. We're looking at guys, we're scouting guys, and we're doing the whole pre-draft stuff. Where look, Cam Scatterbo, right? Like I didn't know how much the NFL would love Cam Scatterbo, right? I
Right.
mean, it's hard to know what they expect. Damian Martinez, right? Falls to the 7th round. I loved him. Right now, I think there's some character issues, which is what's been kind of reported. And maybe that's partially why he fell as far as he did. But yeah, I mean, RJ Harvey. I mean, Jalen, like you look at Caleb Johnson's situation with Jalen Warren. Jalen Warren was brought back, right? I'm not saying Jalen Warren's going to be a guy that is going to be the RB1, but like you said, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Cordell freaking Patterson is getting the first snap at running back this season, the way Arthur Smith runs the offense. So I'm with you, or I guess you're with me, and I'm reiterating it. I'm a big fan of Harvey, and I can totally be blunt and say maybe I'm over my skis with him a little bit, but I think we're getting pretty good value for him, and even in redraft right now, he's like RB 25. Like I just
That's
don't
that's
see.
that feels like the floor, does it not?
Uh, I mean, for a guy that's likely going to get 200 to 250 touches in a Sean Payton, I mean, Javonte Williams had, I think, 70 targets last year, and
Yes.
Javonte was just a shell of himself, right?
Yes.
And the last thing I'll say on it is Sean Payton has made the comp to Darren Sproles and Kamara multiple times in OTAs this season with RJ Harvey. I mean, so he clearly sees something there, and the Jaguars were upset that Denver took him because they were going to take him in that round. So people thought like, oh, the Broncos reached. Clearly, other NFL teams saw something as well in RJ Harvey, and with that kind of conviction, taking him there, I mean, I think it cements what we felt, and the draft capital backed it up.
100%. Like, that's the thing is, if nothing else, he has value day one as a pass catcher. And people will say, well, he didn't catch passes in college. Well, all you have to do is just go to the Senior Bowl footage of running back versus linebacker one-on-ones, and you get exactly what you need to know about his chops as a route runner and a pass catcher. And he's going to have plenty of those opportunities to do so at the next level. So I'm all in on his ADP in redraft. I'm all in on his ADP in Dynasty. Like, it just feels like a really cheap buy, and kind of, for lack of a better, it's like, how did we miss this? How are we not more bullish on a guy with the track record that he has, going to an offense like that. So that it doesn't make sense to me, but I've learned to stop questioning stuff. Sometimes, like we said earlier in the episode, sometimes the obvious answer is the correct answer, and we don't have to make the game harder than it is. But moving down the board a little bit. So after RJ Harvey, we talked about Derrick Henry. We haven't talked about anything else here. Tyreek Hill goes in the 6th round, one pick after Derrick Henry. So we got two, I guess it would be what triple generians, trigenarians, in
Geriatrics.
31-year-old Derrick Henry and 31-year-old Tyreek Hill going off the board. Where do you find yourself? Are you bullish or bearish on their outlooks? I mean, obviously Derrick Henry is going to be I feel like Derrick Henry is going to be a star. I'm a Titans fan, if you can't see the Corey Davis jersey back there.
Yeah.
But where do you land on Tyreek Hill this year?
So I just like, full disclosure, I just did the rankings for the wide receivers and the tiers, and I have Tyreek Hill as my wide receiver 34. Now that seems pretty low, and I get it. I just think that there's not a ton of insulation in his situation, and so I'm projecting him just one more year. I'm not saying he's going to retire, but I don't know where he's going to go. And the thing that worries me the most is insulation, and I don't know what to expect with the Dolphins this year, right? I mean, Mike McDaniels, like, who was such a sought after coach after his first season, everybody loved him. If they're not good this year, I worry that the coaching staff's gone. And then where does Tyreek Hill go? Are both of them still there? The one thing I'll say about Tyreek Hill is he did have the wrist injury last year that he was playing through OTAs, through camp, I believe. And then it later came out that he had it. I'd prefer Devontae Adams, who goes off the board a couple rounds later. I have Adams higher. But I look at Hill, and when I know what Mike McDaniels can do. I know he can manufacture touches and scheme him open. And when I watched Hill play, there wasn't a lack of juice. It was a lack of chemistry with the quarterback situation, which was a mess last year. And I think the wrist injury was affecting him, right? And so it's more of a matter of like, is Tyreek Hill there mentally anymore? Does he want it enough? If Tyreek Hill wants it, I think he's going to be a fine play this year as long as Tua is healthy. That's the best answer that I can give you, but I can only project him for 1 year. So that's why I have him so low in my dynasty rankings.
100%. We're of the same mind as far as that goes. Now, one thing that happened with the Dolphins is that they completely changed the structure of the offense to be hyper targeting Tyreek Hill. We're talking about 159 targets his first year in 2022, then 170 targets, and he's on pace to break the receiving record in 2023. That dips down to 123 targets last year. And you ask yourself, is it the offense? He clearly didn't lose a step. Are they kind of phasing him out? But then they gave him the 3-year, $96 million extension, and like you got the rumors coming out about nobody really taking fine seriously and showing up late to stuff, and it's just not. It's a very, very, very dynamic situation, and not dynamic in a good way. It seems like there's way too much uncertainty to go beyond to make more than a 1-year bet on Tyreek Hill.
I'm with you. That's I mean, you summed it up. I mean, I could go on and on about it, but I think that pretty much puts a bow on it for me. I don't have really much to rebuttal there because I think everything that you said pretty much is pretty in line with how I feel as well.
Yeah. So let's move to the next round. Like following Tyreek Hill, we've got Chuba Hubbard, Tyler Warren, Zay Flowers, Xavier Worthy, Tua Tagovailoa, Sam Darnold, George Kittle, Anthony Richardson, Devonta Smith, Brandon Ayuk, DJ Moore, George Pickens, Jackson Dart, Terry McLaurin, and Jordan Addison here. So this is a mini wide receiver run. I believe 6 wide receivers went, or 7 go in the 7th round here. Is there anything that sticks out here for you? There's one that sticks out for me, and I'm gonna see if we have the same answer because we haven't talked about any of this. It's happening in real time. So
Yeah.
what sticks out to you here?
George Pickens at the 7-9 ahead of Terry is kind of nuts to me. I
knew
I think
it.
yeah.
Without talking about it, I knew
Okay.
it.
Okay. I was gonna say, I mean, I would take Jaden Reed over Pickens, who just went off the board now. I mean, I'm not a big Pickens guy. I think if you can sell him high right now, that's what I'm doing in my leagues. I've tried to. I can't find biters, but if I go on Dynasty Daddy and I look, he's like the most traded player even before the actual trade, and people are getting some good returns on him. Like I'm not. I look. He's also on a 1-year deal, and Dallas can get a comp pick back, the
Mm-hmm.
same pick back that they gave up if he walks. And we've seen Dallas. They don't pay their guys often. So I don't know how I don't think he stays there after this year. So again, we talk insulation. I don't know where he's going to go. And he's got an issue fitting in with people because he seems to be a little bit of a head case. So I worry that he's going to go to his 3rd team after this year. And we don't know what that situation could be. It could be a really bad spot. And he just hasn't done enough for me to warrant being drafted this high, which I think I think that's in like the top 20 wide receivers, and I can't get behind that.
Now, I'm on the opposite side of my thoughts on George Pickens, but from the value from a dynasty perspective. So George Pickens is probably my most owned dynasty player, and I could not have been happier when he got traded to Dallas. Now, here's why. Here's why. For one, I could not get more than like the 205 for George Pickens in any dynasty league where I have him. And I have him in probably 75% of the dynasty leagues that I'm in. So before the trade, I could not get more than a second for him. I flipped him 3 times, each of which involving a first in either 26 or 27, and then something on top of it, either a second in 26 or a second in 27, something like that. So I was thrilled about the trade because it gave me an opportunity to liquidate and get more capital. Now, I do think that he has a very unique skill set that fits perfectly in Dallas if he is on his best behavior, which I think even he won't short circuit himself into, costing himself like millions upon millions of dollars. But it's also, you have the old adage, like when Pittsburgh moves on from a wide receiver, just beware.
Aside from Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah. But I mean, Emmanuel Sanders was
a
humanitarian and an amazing human. And they just didn't have the capital to try to keep him because he was going to command more than what they could pay on the market. So
I think he's a good fit. I think that's a good point. I think to your point, I think best behavior makes sense. This is a contract year for him, right? Like he's got to lock in and go get that bag, right? And so now once he gets the bag, does he fall back to old ways? I don't know, right? But I think your point is valid. I think we're on the same wavelength of if you can flip him right for premium capital like you did, like that's what I'm taking advantage of. But I do think he complements CeeDee Lamb's skill set really well, and I think Dak Prescott's a super underrated quarterback. I think I had said the other day, and I think you might have commented too, but ring culture's really kind of skewed our opinions on quarterbacks. And Dak Prescott's a way better quarterback than people give him credit for. And he's always had these up and down years. Last year was a down year. I'm expecting an up year. And he gets another weapon, and that running back room stinks. So you got to assume that they're going to throw the football. And I'm not a big Eberflus fan, who they just brought in at DC. So
Yeah.
are they in a positive pass game script?
Yeah, no, they're going to have to score points to win games.
Yeah.
The thing about that is the thing that gives me hope for being able to count on him potentially more than we have in the lineup is that we saw Michael Gallup, like he's the plussed up version of a player of Michael Gallup. I've always said that George Pickens is probably the best wide receiver in the NFL at one thing, and it's balls that travel more than 20 yards in the air outside the numbers. It's like 75-25 catch rate,
The circus
you
ones,
know.
yeah.
And so it like that to me, if he's going to be in that role and they're going to give him catch and run opportunities and Dak's going to throw, back shoulders and 50-50 balls, I'm going to be way, way more into him in redraft and finding the value as
Sure.
opposed to the commitment to him from a dynasty perspective, because I finally last year was ready to admit, like, okay, this is very problematic behavior, and I don't know how much longer his perceived prodigious talent is going to allow him to get away with this, or if he goes to a different organization that doesn't have the type of commitment that Pittsburgh makes to their players. Like if he goes and cuts up in Dallas and then he goes and gets a 2-year 40 or $50 million deal somewhere else, like we're just going to be in that cycle for the rest of his career. So I'm glad that that was exactly who I had in mind. So I'm glad that you brought it up.
Well, I will say, to put a button on it, Pickens right now, if you are doing fast draft, yeah, he's going 39. Maybe an interesting combination, right? Where maybe you pick him up and CeeDee Lamb, maybe a unique stack there. But I mean, 39, and keeping in mind that fast draft doesn't, in the flex four at least, there's no quarterbacks. So it's just skill position players. So 39, with quarterbacks, if it was a regular best ball, he's probably pushed outside of the top 60. But 39 feels probably not outside the top 60, probably around 50, 55. But 39 is a decent price for him. It goes around guys like Rashee Rice, Devontae Adams. I think I'd rather Adams though in redraft this year. Am I crazy to say that too?
No, because we just saw what it looked like for Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham a couple, like that was 3 or 4 years ago. Stafford hasn't deteriorated physically, in my opinion, at all. And now
Yeah.
you have the Cooper Kupp replacement in Puka Nacua, and you have the guy that can win in multiple alignments and absolutely embarrass you in one-on-one coverage in Devontae Adams. So no, there's zero chance that I would, if they're both on the clock, I'm taking Devontae Adams 10 out of 10.
I'm so excited to see that offense this year. I
Yeah,
think I think they're gonna love him.
if it doesn't work, it's because someone got injured somewhere.
Yeah.
That's my take. I mean, Devontae Adams has a type of old man game where it's not super reliant on athleticism. He's one of the most skilled players at the position that we've seen in terms
Yeah.
of his releases and then strong hands, just being a professional. And so I don't see how it doesn't really work. Again, I'm struggling for ways to figure out where, okay, this just fails. They're not on the same page. Like you have Matthew Stafford, who's willing to hyper target his wide, like whoever has the matchup advantage, he's willing to hyper target them. Puka Nacua averaged almost 11 targets last year, in the 9 games where he played more than 30% of the snaps. So yeah, I'm with you. If given the choice, I have to take the security that I feel with Devontae Adams, and I'm just willing to be wrong.
Yeah, I'm totally in line with you. I think I I mean, There's a world where Puka and Devontae Adams are both top 15. I mean, we talk about like quarterbacks that can give you two wide receivers like that are top 15 when we talk Chase and Higgins, we talked about BTJ and Travis Hunter, like Puka and Adams have a really strong possibility to be top 15. I trust Matt Stafford. He's still balling. I, I mean, when you think about quarterback play, like it is you're gonna be hard pressed to find somebody just I get the flashy. Everybody likes Lamar. Everybody likes Jaden Daniels. Bo Nix runs now and stuff. But just like being able to watch the old school quarterback play, where it's just such a mental game. Like Stafford's still got it, man. And like you said, as long as he's healthy and those guys stay healthy, Puka's had some issues staying healthy. He was banged up a lot his rookie year, but he didn't miss any games. Last year he only played 11. But if those guys can stay healthy, great. And honestly, if you're looking at Puka's track record with the injuries that he's had, I mean, Devontae Adams could get even more hyper targeted
Yes.
if he misses time, which is crazy because Adams is the guy that's 31, and we're talking about Puka, who's the young man in the room. But I would not be surprised. I would be if I'm betting today who misses more time this year. I'm gonna put my chips on Puka missing more time.
Yes, without question. Like there's no doubt in my mind. Like we've only seen Devontae Adams get nicked up like a couple times. To my memory off the top of my head, there's never been a catastrophic injury where he missed a ton of time. He was working through early in his career. I know he was working through like a high ankle sprain the year where Jordy Nelson tore his ACL and he
Yep.
sucked that year where he had to be the guy, but then he evolved into Devontae Adams. So I can't recall a time where he's ever been injured. So yeah,
Well,
that's a great point.
last year he was injured. He missed 3 games, but was he really injured with the Raiders before he came over to the Jets? It seemed
Well,
like he was kind of
he
holding.
got traded and immediately started playing again. So it's like,
That's
how
what I mean.
serious was that?
And then before that, he played 17 games 2 years in a row, and then 2021 he played 16, right? So, I mean, he's practically played every single game in the last 4 years. He's actually held up better this time of his career, and he's has way more of a workload at the back half of his career. If you look at the beginning half in the first 5 years, I mean, he had 169 targets in 2018, 111 catches. But if you look at all the targets he's had in the last 4 or 5 years, like he's almost like fine wine. He's aging better.
Yes. Yeah. Like he's got the old man game. It's just I know I know where I need to be. I know how to get there. I know how to make you think I'm going. It's again, he's the professional's professional, and he's gonna end up with a gold jacket one day. And I'm glad that I got to see this historic ascent. Nobody would have picked him to be arguably the best wide receiver from the 2014 class. If you were looking at it then, it's like Sammy Watkins or Devontae Adams. It's like, well, Sammy Watkins is incredible. It's Clemson, yeah.
The
So
fall off for Sammy was kind of nuts.
yeah, yeah,
It was
yeah. I
more
mean, like,
injury related though, right? I mean, he went to the Bills and he was kind of not himself at that point, right? I'm trying to
well,
think.
so if I'm not, so they draft like the Bills drafted him, then he went to the Chiefs, and
Right?
then
Didn't he
he would
come back to
always.
the Bills though?
I think he went back to the Bills, but he was cooked at that point. Like he just
No, he
couldn't
went to
do anything.
He went to Baltimore. He went to
Dang.
Baltimore. I made a mistake. He was
Did
drafted by
he?
the Bills, then Rams, then 3 years Kansas City, then Baltimore.
So he just did. If I'm not mistaken, he didn't do anything with Los Angeles, and then he did nothing with the Ravens, right?
He had 8 touchdowns with Los Angeles, but he only caught 39 catches for 593. So he was just strictly like a red zone guy at the
Oh,
time. I remember that was the year with Goff. 2017 might have been the year that they went to the Super Bowl, actually. Um,
yeah. Okay. 2017, 2018.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that just that was wild. I don't know. I don't know what happened. There's jokes about him like being like a big like believer in lizard people and all that stuff. And he's a strange individual. But getting back to the mock draft, there's a guy here. So after we just discussed ad nauseum George Pickens and then Devontae Adams. We're skipping around the board a little bit. going around down, same team, Huncho. Shout out to Huncho, Fast Draft affiliate. He takes DeAndre Swift in the 10th round. And I going into it, I thought there was no way, there was no chance whatsoever that we were going to exit the 2025 NFL draft with this vaunted running back class and Ben Johnson, and DeAndre Swift would not have backfield competition. But they only add Kyle Monangai. Now you can speculate as to how they were playing the board and this, that, and the third. But the fact is, there's no real backfield competition for DeAndre Swift now. Where do you land on him as a value in redraft? In dynasty and redraft.
So I mean, when you look at where he goes off the board and just the players around him, at this point, right? Like, I would rather Charbonnet just because I think there's a chance that Walker's gone next year. So Charbonnet goes right behind him. I'd rather him over Pacheco. I think he, it's really a tough situation to project with him because his contract is movable. This was also the guy that it was the first acquisition that they made last season, like the first hour. So they clearly liked him a lot, and it's not like it's a different GM. Like Poles is still there. So I mean, it's. He's a tough one. I don't want to get over my I'm not going to get over my skis with him, but what I would say is I would be selling him if I could get something decent for him, because I'm thinking there's a possibility they bring somebody else in. I don't know, but I'm just trying to project there. I don't know. It's I'm not the biggest Swift fan. I mean, 3 teams in his entire career. Ironically, my buddy actually played football with him in high school.
Really?
They went to the same high school down in Philly. I think it's St. Joe's Prep. But I mean, he's a good player. And honestly, look, one thing I'll say is he's not Jahmyr Gibbs, but maybe he can play a similar satellite back role, which we know he can do. And maybe Ben Johnson gets really creative with him. I just know that it seems like from what we've heard that, we could speculate all we want, but it seems like they did want to bring somebody else in and it just didn't work out that way. So, you got to roll with the Jimmies and Joes that you got. And he's going to get opportunities this year. It's just, to me, it's concerning because he didn't have a ton of competition in the room last year, and he didn't make enough out of that. But new offensive coordinator, new coaching staff, and we'll see what they say.
Yeah, that's an interesting one for me because like I said, I was almost certain, like we all were, that they were going to draft a Travion Henderson, RJ Harvey, someone with the pass catching chops, with with a more explosive profile than what he has. I'm on the clock right here.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab my late round auto select in. I just can't. I can't quit. I can't quit Jalen Coker. But just to put some numbers to it, he did have over 1,200 yards from scrimmage. He had 295 total opportunities, and that's in a broken offense. So do we port those numbers over to a Ben Johnson offense and how much more efficient he could become? They've upgraded the offensive line significantly. They just gave Joe Thuney another 2-year extension. Joe Thuney's only allowed like 8 sacks in the last. I saw a tweet say he's only allowed 8 sacks in the last 4 years or something of that sort. So they've done everything they can to upgrade this offensive line to fortify the offensive line for Caleb. But I think a casual beneficiary, like a secondary beneficiary to that could be DeAndre Swift. So I'm not sure. I'm terrified from a dynasty perspective, but he's so cheap. Right now he's the 80th player in our Flex 4 ADP. So I kind of want to buy. Like I kind of want to just steal him at, like in the like making my last pick. Like when I reorder my things on Fast Draft, like he's like I put him in like 59, 60 every single time.
Yeah. He's I look at him similar to like Rashad White in some ways. I
Yeah,
actually like I think Rashad White's a really nice value. I think Rashad White has RB2, low end RB2. Like he's going to give you a safe floor because he catches the football. He's going to be involved in the offense, right? When we look at DeAndre Swift, no
Come
matter who
on.
they bring in, there's not a good receiving back on the market still, right? If you want to sell me on J.K. Dobbins or Nick Chubb, that's more of a concern for Roshan than it is for Swift. When you
correct.
look at Swift's numbers last year as a receiver, right, yards per reception, he was ranked fifth. In terms of his targets 15th. He had 52 targets, and now he's going to get an offensive. And he was 10th in receiving yards, 14th in receptions. He's going to get a coach that's probably going to deploy him better. My thing is, to your point, you're not paying a lot for him, and he's just the last girl at the bar, right? He's the last girl at the bar, kind of like James Conner in some ways. Like nobody wants to draft James Conner every year, but he's going to fall into the end zone 8 times and give you, a couple RB1 finishes and finishes like the RB15 every
Come
single year,
on.
right? Like Swift, people do, like maybe I'm talking myself into it because I've been so hard on him, and maybe you're kind of talking me into him a little bit. But for the price for an RB needy team, I mean, what are you spending on Swift? You might be able to get him for a swap of like, a Tank Bigsby, who people don't want to face the reality. I'm not that high on Tank Bigsby this year, so like
Right.
you might be able to swap him for Bigsby. I mean, so I mean he's cheap, and I think it's worth a swing if you're an RB needy team, because it's not going to cost much.
Right. I mean, like, I was going over this on another show, but you're swapping, you're doing stuff like swapping, Tank, like you said, Tank Bigsby, who does not fit the profile of, Liam Cohen's offense at all.
No,
Travis Etienne and Basil Tootin do.
yeah.
Tank Bigsby has like 20 career receptions. I might be being very generous on that number through 2 seasons.
People will bring up
And
they'll bring up the college stats because he had an okay amount of receptions in college, but I mean I'm with you.
yeah. So like you could do like Tank Bigsby and a third, like a second and third swap for DeAndre Swift, just because you're
Yeah,
buying an extra year. I know they can get out. The Bears can get out of DeAndre Swift's contract for like 3.2 million after this year.
yeah.
Him and Tony Pollard, all those guys that signed those
Come
3 year
on.
deals pretty much can be gone after this year.
Yeah.
So I would, in redraft, I feel like he's a value. In dynasty, he's a rental for me because of the fact that they can move on so quickly. But there's no, I mean, again, last girl at the bar. Like, man, I've struck out, but I got to take one more swing at a guy who can, he, like I said, he handled 295 opportunities last year. And he
Yeah.
did have a really good stretch. Now it was against, one of those games was against the Panthers, who were the worst defense in the history of mankind against running backs last year from a fantasy perspective. And the weeks 4 through 7, I think he had 530 yards from scrimmage and 4 touchdowns. And I was begging people to sell. It's like, get out while you can, because it's going to go really bad after this. And it did. But now he's in the Ben Johnson offense, and he's the factor back, unless you are terrified by Kyle Monangai, which I think he could usurp Roshan Johnson's goal line role, but I don't think he's a threat to DeAndre Swift.
Monangai was a good special teams guy, I think, too. And he was a late pick. He's a Rutgers kid. I'm from Jersey, so I'm rooting for him. Just like Pacheco is from Rutgers too. But and I like Monangai. I stashed him in a lot of leagues. I mean, it's
Oh yeah.
pretty much free. So
Yeah. You can get him, either you take him in the back half of the 4th round, or you just throw like $15 a fab on him, and people are like, who is this?
hey, let me tell you something interesting. When we talk about Swift, I would trade Swift for Tracy. If you could give me Swift and a third, I would do it for Tracy. I'm not a huge believer in Tracy. I was big on him last year. He was my
Mhm.
most owned guy in best ball. I think the fumbling is concerning. I don't think he runs between the tackles that great, and I think Scadaboo. I don't think Tracy's long for that, and he was a 5th round pick that was kind of like found money in your pocket. I
Right.
would be comfortable swapping Swift, you could probably get something added on top. And crazy enough, Tracy goes behind Swift here, which I feel like if you ask the general population, most people would probably rather Tracy. But I'd take Swift, honestly.
Yeah, I think I'm from a dynasty perspective, I'm definitely with you. Like I said, there's 2 more years of contract security beyond this year for Tyrone Tracy, and I mean, if it goes poorly for DeAndre Swift, the Bears are going to move on in after 2025 for very minimal cap. So, looking through some of these builds, like, is there any of these that stand out to you?
Well, I want to ask you a question. I know you're the host, but you and me did the similar thing here where we both didn't take a quarterback in the first 2 rounds. Is that something that you normally do?
I have grown on this just because I feel like there's a lot more value to be had. And I mean, I put out an article, Cornerstone Dynasty Assets, and Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs were 2 and 3 behind Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors obviously goes a pick before me here, but I couldn't pass up that opportunity to get both of them in
Yep.
this instance. So it's like, man, I can still get somebody. Now I'm very bullish on Michael Penix, Captain Durag. For those of you who are uninitiated, I'm very bullish on Michael Penix. So I was fine with taking him as my QB1, and then just, normally I would try to grab like some other, some like later round guy, like maybe taking a Tyler Shuck where he went, just to have like maybe a little bit more security. Or if you believe Spencer Rattler is going to win the job, whatever, we can grab that guy. We can grab him a little bit later as well. So yeah, I have converted from being like, I have to have quote unquote like hammer quarterback, like an elite guy. But you hit it on the head in the very beginning. There's such a drop off in terms of like points per game and like difference making weeks on the
Yep.
front end, like from the pick 5, basically, where you took Jamar Chase. I mean, I know we go, Burrow goes pick 6 right after that, and he could do that. But if he regresses at all and it goes from 4,943 to 4,032, like, that's significant, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, when you look at like take Jamar Chase for example, and if I just make this like let's just say like minimum 300 snaps for wide receivers last year. I mean, Jamar Chase had 5 more points per game than Justin Jefferson, who was the number 2 wide receiver. That gap is huge, right? You look at like the number 9 wide receiver was JSN, who had 14 points per game. Jamar Chase had 23. Now, do I expect Jamar Chase to have 23 points per game every single year? Absolutely not. But you're likely getting 4 to 5 more points per game than the wide receiver 10 and beyond, right? And then when you look at quarterbacks, you look at Lamar Jackson, 25, Josh Allen, 22, Joe Burrow, 22, Baker Mayfield, 22, Jaden Daniels, 21, Goff, 19, Hurts, 20. Like, I mean, a lot of these guys outside of the top elite, there's not a huge drop off between, Justin Herbert and Kyler Murray had pretty much a point difference. Like, there's just not a huge gap. And I
Mhm.
think it's overrated unless you're getting an elite guy like Lamar, Allen, Jaden Daniels, or Jalen Hurts, who I think is still at that point. He's still a top 5 dynasty asset for me at quarterback.
One, without question. I mean, we experienced a dip in passing volume, but he still recorded his 4th straight double-digit rushing touchdown season as a quarterback. So
Yeah.
you made up for it. You made up for that bump, and I know he only played 15 games because of the concussion against the Commanders, but you're looking at probably 425, 430 attempts, but also he's giving you double-digit rushing touchdowns and between 400 and 600 yards rushing on a year in, year out basis, which is plenty to make up for the lack of passing volume. So, yeah, no, I'm if I can't get one of those guys, it's going to be really difficult to move off of my roster. I feel like it gives me more flexibility. If Michael Penix comes out and gives me a top 12 season, I could maybe tier up into being able to get a Joe Burrow or something like that to add a little bit more, sustained, safe, quote unquote, value to my lineup. So I don't mind taking those shots. I mean, I'm not a huge Sam Darnold guy, but in the 7th round where I got him, sure, I needed a second quarterback. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And you asked me if there was a team that sticks out. I like the Joe Burrow build at the 106 is interesting, right? He gets Burrow, Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, so I don't know how you want. I mean, if you want to read off his, why don't you read off his lineup? But I like his build there.
So we go Joe Burrow at the 1-6, then Brian Thomas Jr. Follow that up with Nico Collins. So two hammer alpha wide receivers. Then we've got Cam Ward, who I think is going to outperform expectations, but obviously I'm a little bit biased. And then Josh Jacobs and Caleb Johnson. Then he comes back with Brandon Ayuk, who that could be tremendous value. Like, here's a question before I continue reading this off. There's so the truth about his 1,300-yard season is that was historically efficient and he's incredible. And then he comes back this year and has one top 10 finish before tearing his ACL. Do you feel like the truth is more skewed towards the 1,300-yard season or the dud that he gave us in 2024?
I've always been a big fan of Brandon Ayuk. I don't know. I mean, I know he was hyper efficient in 2023. With the 1,300 yards, but no Deebo Samuel, right? And Christian McCaffrey's getting up there in age. I think he's still going to be good. I happen to think he's closer to that 1,300 than he is to, to obviously, I mean, he only had 374 yards last year in 7 games, which I don't think that's the kind of player that he is. He had 0 touchdowns. Like, I mean, that's not the kind of guy he is. He was at 8.9 points per game. I think there was a lot going on. I think he was distracted. He finally got paid, but he was missing from camp. There's a lot going on there. And then there was a lot of injuries too, a lot of moving parts. So I think to your question, I think he's closer to that 2023 where he had 16 points per game, and this guy gets him as his wide receiver 3 behind 2 studs who, I mean, if his floor is wide receiver 25, that's fine for a third wide receiver on a roster when you have Brian Thomas Jr. and Nico Collins.
Right, exactly. And if it hits, then you have 3 studs. Then you can move Brandon Ayuk for to upgrade at other positions. But finishing it out, you've got Dalton Kincaid in the 8th round, Jerry Jeudy in the 9th round, Mark Andrews in the 10th, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Etienne, Michael Pittman, J.K. Dobbins, and Rico Dowdle to finish this out. So really solid job by Mr. Sugstad. He's one of my league mates in a dynasty league that we're in together. We've been in there for a couple years now. He is he'd be wheeling and dealing a lot of this. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did try to flip Brandon Ayuk. I like that build. I like that build quite a bit. The one that kind of sticks out to me is Big Boned it over here. Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, JSN, AJ Brown, Chris Olave, Kenny Three Sticks, Ken Walker, Terry McLaurin, Joe Mixon, Khalil Shakir, Jonnu Smith, and then Calvin Ridley, and then he goes custodian build at quarterback. Obviously, we don't want to be going into week 1 with Tyler Shuck, but to quote Scott Connor, any quarterback on a 53, if you're going to work hard at that second flex spot, if you got a hammer in Lamar Jackson, you can work on that super flex spot to try to get some sort of production there. Then he finishes out. He's a huge Land Larison guy. They're from the same area, so he finishes it out with Land Larison, undrafted free agent.
A little fun pick at the end. That's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So that was kind of one that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I like the build because we talk about quarterback anchors. This is a perfect example, right? Like you have Lamar Jackson, who is going to, if Tyler Shuck ends up being a 14 points per game guy and Lamar Jackson is going to be a top 3 guy, right? And he's giving you 4 to 6 points above average, right? That makes up for Shuck being at 14 where maybe he's average to below average, right? And you can, like you said, that you can make moves, right? Like you can go to me who has Matt Stafford as his 3rd quarterback, say Bryce Young and Jordan Love end up being good, and I'm a contender and I need a running back because Christian McCaffrey or James Conner, who have injury histories, get hurt, right? Like there are ways to upgrade, but I do really like his build as well. I think he's got Barkley, he's got Walker, he's got Mixon. I mean, those are 3 guys that if you told me at the end of the season that all 3 of them were top 15 to even top 12 running backs at the end of the season, I wouldn't look at you and say there's no shot. I mean, would I say I'm surprised? Yeah, probably more closer to 2 out of those 3, but overall a really nice build. And I don't mind getting Olave here because you have 2 really good wide receivers in JSN and AJ Brown. You have Terry McLaurin, who is a nice insurance in case Olave doesn't return to form. And I mean, so really Olave could be his 4th wide receiver. I mean, that's really
Exactly.
good value.
Yeah. That's outstanding. Like that to me is what kind of stuck out is, if Olave can stay, one, he's free from Derek Carr hospital balls. So
Yeah.
that's a bump in and of itself. So that stuck out to me because I mean, there was a point in time where Olave was probably, in that 2-3 in second, third round range in startups, just going into 2024. I mean, he was one of the most sought after and almost blue chip assets at the wide receiver position for one of the young players. But we don't want to hold the people too long. Pete, I know I mentioned in the beginning, you're the co-founder of First Read Fantasy. Tell us a little bit more about that before we get out of here, and tell them when your video. Like, I won't spoil it for you, so I'll just let you talk
Yeah.
about First Read.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, so I'm going out on my own venture here. Obviously I'm staying with Player Profiler, but I'm also doing something on my own. We've already got a lot of support. Haven't dropped the video yet. We've already got 150 subscribers. I do a lot of different content. I'll be partnering with my colleague Michael Hoff, who you'll actually see a video of mine and his drop here sometime this week. I think tomorrow, actually, depending on when this airs. Overall, I mean, we're gonna do a ton of different content, a lot of Dynasty. Maybe Chev will come on for a show or two.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'll say this: I am a defensive minded guy. I love DST. Defensive streamers is my thing. We might do some DST IDP dynasty rankings too. Might mix some of that in addition to all your regular dynasty redraft. We're gonna have everything there. It's gonna be a fun time. And if you like listening to me, go ahead and give that a subscribe. It's First Read Fantasy on YouTube, and you can find that on Twitter as well.
Fantastic. Well, this has been another legendary mock draft. I'm the legendary ball knower. That's the Supernova at Supernova 2Rs 38 on the X Twitter machine. Thank you for tuning in, and we are out.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.